Hi, everyone. My name is Ali Edelstein, and I am the Program Manager for the Fulbright Schuman Award, which is administered by the Fulbright Commission in Brussels, Belgium. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the eligibility requirements for this award, how to apply, and then you're going to hear from one of our recent Fulbright Schuman alumna from Greece and her host from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they'll be talking a little bit about how to turn your project into a US-EU relevant research project, as well as how to contact potential hosts in the United States. So, on the agenda, we'll be talking about the purpose of the award, how it's financed by the U.S. government and the EU's government, as well as the EU citizen application process. The purpose of the award. The Fulbright Schuman Award is unique. It is the only award of its kind in the sense that it's a multilateral award. It's not just between the United States and one other country, such as the United States and Belgium. It's between the United States and all 27 EU member states. So citizens from any of the EU countries can apply. And the purpose is to promote mutual understanding, which is why the research projects that are most relevant for this award have to do with EU policy and US-EU affairs. It's financed by two different entities, the US Department of State, who you'll see here on your right, and the EU Commission. The value of the award is one of our most prestigious awards. It's about 3,000 euros maintenance per month and a 2,000 euro one-time travel and relocation costs. We also provide sickness and accident insurance for your time in the U.S. This isn't comprehensive health insurance, but it will meet most of your needs during your stay in the U.S. And you'll also be traveling on a J1 government-sponsored visa. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means to go on a J1 visa. What does it mean to go to the U.S. on a J1 visa under the Fulbright Schuman program? Well, this means that you're required to return back to Europe for at least 2 years after your studies are over before you're allowed to return to the United States as an H visa, temporary worker or trainee, as an intra-company transferee on an L visa, or as a permanent resident of the U.S. This requirement scares a lot of potential applicants, but it's nothing to be worried about. You are allowed to return to the U.S. as a tourist on other short-term visas, but the purpose of this requirement, the 2-year home residency requirement, is because we want you to bring back the newfound knowledge that you've gained in the United States and share it with others in Europe to promote that mutual understanding. Katerina asks, what happens if a student has already obtained an F1 visa via his or her school's admission office? Well, Katerina, if you already have an F1 visa, that likely means that you're already in school in the United States and are thus ineligible to apply for this award. This award is open to citizens of all 27 EU member states. However, you cannot be in the U.S. at the time of application. It is also important to note that you have to travel on this J1 visa. So even if the school or institution that you're working with offers to sponsor your visa, you have to travel on a J1. And it's very important because it's a privilege. It is a government-sponsored visa. It does not prevent you, like I said, from returning to the U.S. as an F1 student or as a B1, B2 tourist later on. Does anyone have any questions about this requirement? Because I know it's kind of confusing. It's actually really great because the commissions that we work with to help administer the Fulbright Schuman program really help walk you through the visa process. So it's really easy to obtain all the correct paperwork, know what you need to do, and get the visa on time for your departure for the United States. I see that someone is typing, so I'll hold on for just 1 minute. What happens if you build academic collaborations and you need to go back for a few months for research? That's a great question. You can return, as this says, on a J1 student visa or some other categories in the future. You're also allowed to finish any studies that you may need. So even if you're only sponsored by the Fulbright Schuman Award for, let's say, 6 months, but you need to stay 2 years to finish your research, then we do continue to sponsor your visa for that extra year until you finish your studies. If you build academic collaborations and you need to go back, you can go back on a certain short-term type visa. Does that provide the clarification that you need? A lot of our alumna and alumni do continue to work with their hosts, and that's what Dr. Bukovala, and Dr. Glenn will be talking about at the end of this presentation. So we have two different categories of grants for EU citizens. We have grants for scholars and grants for students. And the difference between these two categories is very simple. You either hold a PhD or a terminal degree in your field, or you do not. If you do not hold a PhD at the time of departure for the United States, then you are considered a student grantee. So if you are a PhD student in your third year, and you will have defended your PhD by the time you're leaving for the U.S., you will then fall under the grants for scholars. The difference between these two application processes is that students must submit a letter of admission to a school in the United States, an accredited institution, whereas scholars must submit a letter of invitation or affiliation. A letter of invitation or affiliation is usually a very simple letter on professional letterhead of the university or the institution that's offering to host you, stating that they will provide resources for you during your time in the United States, such as a desk or a mailbox or access to their research facilities. This letter will often include the contact information for the person who is inviting you as well for our verification purposes. Any questions about that? Okay, so who is this award for? We generally award 22 EU citizens grants per year, and these citizens all have significant experience in at least 2 EU member states. So we get a lot of questions about what that significant experience means. Generally, it needs to be at least 4 to 6 months in 2 different member states. And so you could have done an Erasmus in Germany and then done your postdoctoral work in Italy, and now you're wanting to go to the U.S. That is the significant experience we're looking for. It can be academic or professional. You also must need 2 years of academic or professional experience beyond the bachelor's degree. So if you have a 2-year master's degree, that would qualify. This award is open to EU professionals and those in training in the areas of decision or policy making, industry, media. So I know we had some people interested in journalism as well. These are just a few categories that we've had people submit proposals in, but this list is not at all exhaustive. At the end, you'll hear from Dr. Bukovala, who did her research in agricultural biology. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about that. You can do your research in several places. Of course, the most logical place that most people think of when they think of this award is at accredited U.S. universities. And we'll talk about how to identify some of those universities later. But you can also perform your research at think tanks and institutions, government offices like the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in vocational settings such as news branches if you're studying journalism. Our grants are for a minimum period of 3 months, maximum 1 academic year, with preference being given to projects of 4 months duration. So since the amount that you earn for this award is based on a monthly maintenance of 3,000 euros per month, it's really important that you justify each month that you're in the United States with real work and a necessity to be there. So if you are doing a degree, however, you will need to stay for a full year at least. If you do not hold a PhD, you have to go for a minimum of 6 months due to visa issues. I'm in the process of finishing my PhD in bone tissue engineering. I have only worked in the Netherlands. Could I still apply? Well, Ms. Overman, where are you from? Are you from the Netherlands? You need to have had a significant experience of at least 4 to 6 months in another EU country to be eligible. Is anyone here interested in international education? If you could just type in this box and say, yes, that's me. Our Fulbright Schuman grant for international educators is open to professionals in this industry who are maybe interested in working in a study abroad office or international education office in the United States. You are responsible for arranging your own placement. And some examples that we've had in the past are researching how the U.S. deals with disability and accommodating students with disabilities in the United States, and how the EU deals with that and how those responses differ. A PhD is not required for this kind of award. However, professionals who apply from international education are placed into our scholar category. The application for process for EU citizens is very simple. You should submit a preliminary application by February 1st, together with a CV and a one-page description of your proposed project. The preliminary application is basically a 1 to 2 page application that asks for biographical information, and in it, with your CV and your one-page description, we're looking to see that you meet the academic excellence requirements and standards that we hold, and you have the significant professional experience in at least 2 EU member countries. You haven't spent too much time in the United States, and that most importantly, your project is relevant to EU policy or US-EU affairs. The deadline for our final applications then is March 1st. So after you submit a preliminary application, we write back to you within 1 week and tell you whether or not your project is eligible for our funding. That prevents you from filling out a 15-page final application if you're not eligible to apply. Here's what the preliminary application form looks like. It's very straightforward. So from last March all the way up to this February 1st, these preliminary applications are available for your submission. Once you're determined eligible, we send you a link to the final application. On March 1st, we cut the deadline to receive these applications, including TOEFL scores if they're required by the institution you'll be attending in the U.S. If they're not, you do not need to provide us with them either. We will need copies of your European diplomas and transcripts, as well as letters of recommendation uploaded into the online system. If you have any questions about what constitutes a good letter of recommendation, feel free to type into the chat box, and I'll answer that for you. We also need a letter of affiliation from a U.S. institution for scholars. In February to March, interviews are held at commissions all over the EU. So you will be responsible for contacting the commission in your home country or country of residence for this interview once you submit the online application. You do not contact them for the interview before then. You will need to mail them a hard copy of your application for their review. However, you do not need to mail a hard copy to the commission in Brussels. I have a few questions here. Do you need certified copies or just photocopies of the documents? In this case, we just need you to upload the official documents via scan into the online system. If we have any questions about their validity, we will come back to you and ask for more information. As long as we can tell the points, the grades that you've earned, there is no real need to translate them if they are not already translated. Letters of recommendation, we require 3. So you're submitting the preliminary application, you're getting yourself approved, you're filling out the final application with all of these documents that I've just mentioned, then you're arranging an interview at the commission that you're applying in that country to. Then late March, early April, we are deciding on the final candidates, and by April, you will be notified via email whether or not you are selected as a Fulbright Schuman Scholar. An EU candidate interview at the Fulbright Commissions is really just to assess what we can't see from your papers. It is usually with a group of several people at a commission, and I'll talk about who composes this type of interview committee in a minute, but we're looking to see that you have ambassadorial qualities, that you can talk about your research in a very real and simple way and explain it to people who may not understand it, and be a real representative for the entire European Union, to be able to answer questions about culture and things like that. We're also looking at your motivation for studying in the United States. Why is the United States necessary for your research? Why can you not perform it here in Europe? We're looking for a specific plan that you've really thought about what you're going to do and how you're going to achieve these goals. Because like I said, if you're receiving 3,000 euros a month, we want a really well-defined plan of what you're going to achieve. We're also looking to evaluate your proficiency in English, and we want to hear about how you plan to use your knowledge when you return. So a selection committee in Brussels, for example, is composed of our executive director and some other European executive directors that may be visiting at the time, some staff from the European Commission, and some professors in European studies, as well as former Fulbright Schuman grantees that we've selected. Some weight is given to a diverse application pool by country and topic. So just a few examples. You can see why this person would have been an eligible candidate. They are a German national, working as a lecturer in Dublin, Ireland. So they already have that experience in 2 EU member states. They are now at the University of California, Berkeley, where they were conducting research on migration. An Italian citizen who received a doctoral degree from Sciences Po in Paris. So again, we have experience in 2 different EU member states, and she's now at Columbia University. I have a question that says, I'm a professor in the University of Piraeus. I think that it is necessary to allow time in order to place my questions. Yes, we will allow time for questions at the end of this presentation. So just a few tips when you're thinking about applying for this award. It's really important that you show the relationship to the European Union and to the U.S., so the 2 entities that will be providing you funding. This award is a really specific one, and it's important that you show us why you should be applying for this award and not a bilateral award between the U.S. and your home country. It's important that you present the benefits of transatlantic relations and mutual understanding. Don't forget to schedule your interview at the commission of your country of residence and follow the instructions. Please be professional when you're communicating with us. I can't tell you how important it is to address people as dear Mr. or dear Mrs. It really makes a big difference when we're evaluating your applications. And of course, have a clear plan of what you want to achieve while you're in the United States. Here's our website. There's a link to it as well on the left-hand side of your screen, the Fulbright Schuman site. It has lots of good information as well as YouTube videos of former grantees. We also have a YouTube channel with these videos uploaded onto it where you can learn more about the award and hear about it from former grantees. A good way to find host institutions is by starting, if you're going to do a master's program, by looking at APSIA schools. APSIA stands for the Association of Professional Schools in International Affairs, and these programs are known for having very strong programs within the international affairs fields. They all work closely together on their research. A lot of the professors within this network collaborate, and they do recruit internationally, especially in Europe. They have a tour in Paris and London and some other places in Europe every fall. But you can also contact them to see about their individual travel schedules because you can arrange interviews for application with these schools. Fulbright Schuman resource page via the Fulbright Schuman website. We have links and contact information for all of the 10 EU Centers of Excellence that exist in the United States. These centers produce relevant research on EU affairs and transatlantic policy, and they receive money from the European Commission to carry out this research. you should also start by looking in journals and other publications in your field to see who's producing the most relevant research to find out where you should be. And of course, networking with all of your contacts. A few examples of current Fulbright Schuman grantees that we have at APSIA schools, you can read them for yourself, or you can check out some of the blogs that we have and some of the news that we post about them on our website. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Drs. Sotiria Bukuvala and Dr. Anthony Glynn. If you all could turn your microphones back on, that would be great. Dr. Bukuvala is a Fulbright Schuman alumna from Greece who went to the United States at the U.S. Department of Agriculture to complete her research. She is going to be talking to you a little bit today about how she made a scientific research proposal applicable to the requirements of the Fulbright Schuman grant. And then Dr. Glynn will chime in at the end and tell you how to reach out to prospective hosts in the U.S. and what caught his attention when Dr. Bukuvala asked him for a letter of invitation. So Dr. Bukuvala, feel free to take it away. And then Dr. Glynn will chime in at the end and tell you how to reach out to prospective hosts in the U.S. and what caught his attention when Dr. Bukuvala asked him for a letter of invitation. So Dr. Bukuvala, feel free to take it away.
Oh, hi, good afternoon from Greece, from a quiet rainy Alexandroupolis. I think my case is a bit unique or strange, would I say, because I'm a scientist, biologist, and I somehow came across the Fulbright Schuman program, and I became very interested. And of course, a key aspect of this program is to justify that the project proposed is of mutual interest between the European Union and the USA. So I will go through some aspects of the whole venture, trying to show how a totally scientific project can be relevant to international affairs, in this case affairs between the EU and the USA. And I'm very grateful to both the Fulbright Schuman program and the offices at Belgium and Athens, Greece. And also, of course, I'm grateful to my host for letting me work in his lab at the USDA, the Agricultural Research Service. And I had a great time. It was also a very productive time for me. So let me just change the slide. Yes. So I don't come from the social sciences, but I guess the international relationships is about addressing social issues, issues that are of mutual interest and significance for distinct geographic areas, at least two countries, and in this case we are talking about the EU and the USA. And of course, people associate the international relationships, international affairs with the social and political sciences. However, natural sciences like biology, physics, chemistry, these sciences are also very relevant. And this is because science today drives technological advancements that can improve the lives of many people worldwide. The key here is to identify specific scientific areas and subjects that can be particularly relevant to the EU and the USA. Any international scientific collaboration, but especially between these huge geographic areas and very much developed geographic areas, can impact societies in many different ways. First of all, science and international collaboration in science can provide solutions to practical problems. Some of these problems are problems of everyday life through the exchange of scientific know-how and the advancement of technology. Also, scientific collaboration in a way in a very important way, in a very significant way, allows the interaction between people of diverse ethnic and cultural backgrounds, and promotes a mutual understanding between people coming from different countries. When you work in a lab, you spend many hours in this lab. You work with other people, you interact with other people. It's not a lonely occupation. People have to get along with each other. They have to communicate. In the typical lab, especially in the USA, one will come across people from different countries of different ethnic backgrounds. So this is a very important aspect of international scientific collaboration. And of course, people who are active in science and technology, they can also influence the policies adopted by their countries with regard not only to the advancement of science, but also to the advancement of the ethics surrounding science and technology. And especially biotechnology, which is my subject, I mean, it can have a very good influence or a very bad influence to society. And since the theme is international relationships and international affairs, it is good to always remember that science is a global thing. There is no Greek science or American science or European science. Science is global. I will just outline the project under the Fulbright Schuman program with Dr. Glenn, just not so much to communicate the technical details, but just to give you an idea of how a scientist can really be relevant to this program. So the subject and the field of this project was agricultural and food biotechnology. The title was Food Safety in the EU, the USA, and beyond. And the subtitle was How to Design Strategies to Control Contamination of Maize and Wheat with Some Very Harmful Natural Chemicals called mycotoxins. These harmful chemicals, the mycotoxins, are produced by fungi that contaminate crops. So these fungi are crop pathogens, and they represent a significant health risk of global concern. And of course, if you are a farmer, or if you are involved in the food industry, then the mycotoxin contamination can be associated with multi-million dollar losses. I don't know, is there a problem with the sound? I understand.
I can hear you just fine, but if you can chime in if you are having trouble hearing Dr. Bukovala. Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So this is the background, the mycotoxin research, or how to tackle this global problem. And then with Dr. Glenn, we had always been collaborating, and we started thinking about the relevance of this research between the two sides of the Atlantic Ocean. So there is relevance, and I'll start with the yes, I try to be as close to the microphone as possible. I'll try to speak louder also. Okay, so to start with, the European Union is a major importer of corn, and there are strict regulations about how much mycotoxin can be present in produce. The US, on the other hand, is a leading exporter of corn. And of course, as a developed country, the USA is enforcing strict measures to prevent mycotoxin contamination. In the developing world, things can be more serious and more difficult because of these stringent standards of the US and the EU. And the outcome may be that a developing country may be more inclined to export the best quality produce and consume domestically the contaminated produce. And this is a very serious thing. And of course, the management, the monitoring, and the elimination of the contaminated commodities is something that costs a lot of money. for the developed as well as the developing countries. I don't know if you can hear me a little bit better now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So as I said, we are both Dr. Glenn and myself. We are scientists, and so our scientific objective was to validate molecular targets that we could handle in order to prevent mycotoxin contamination and the mycotoxin-producing fungi from infecting host plants of agroeconomic significance on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, mainly wheat and maize. There was a lot of complementary expertise there, and that is perhaps the most beautiful part of the collaboration. Dr. Glenn is a plant pathologist who has been studying biochemical systems that in these fungi of interest. These fungi can resist the chemical defenses of their host plants, and that's where my expertise starts because I'm a molecular geneticist and I have studied how living organisms can adapt to the chemical challenges of their environments. So I knew a lot about specific biochemical systems, adaptation systems to the chemical environment from my previous research, and Dr. Glenn just gave me the idea that these systems could be relevant to the subject of his research, which is the mycotoxin-producing fungi. As I said, we had been collaborating before writing the Fulbright Schuman proposal, but coming together and working together was very, very important. And the outcome of this interaction has been the unraveling of some key aspects of the pathways enabling the pathogenic fungi to survive on plants, on maize and wheat, and contaminate them with mycotoxins. And we now believe that we have identified the specific biomolecules, we call them enzymes, that we can use as targets to design an effective and sustainable strategy to control plant infection and the establishment of the fungus as a pathogen. So this is how the core scientific part of the aspect of the project can fit in the key objective of the Fulbright Schuman, which has to do with a bilateral or relationship between the EU and the US. So if I can provide some tips to make of how to make a proposal for the Fulbright Schuman program successful, first of all, you really need to carefully define the project objectives, irrespectively of whether you come from science or from other disciplines. And one needs to work with the host to highlight the aspects of the project which are relevant to the specific program, the Fulbright Schuman program. It is very important, as with any proposal, it is very important to describe the methods towards the implementation of the objectives, especially in this case, those objectives which are of mutual interest for the US host and the EU visitor. And it is very important, again, to present the strengths of the collaboration. And if you are going to spend a few months in the US, then you have to say and justify why the interaction and the day-to-day work with the host is important. And my most important tip is do not hesitate, just go for it, because as I said, good science transcends the borders. That is, let's say, from personal experience, because I hesitated. When I read about the profiles of other Fulbright Schuman scholars, I hesitated. I thought that science has nothing to do with this program. But then we tried and it all went very well. And I'm very happy that I had the opportunity to participate in this program. This is just to show a picture of the place where this work was performed. This is the Russell Research Center of the USDA, the Agricultural Research Service, and you can see some members of the lab and some members of this lovely group. And I had a great time, as I said, and a very productive time, and this is an ongoing collaboration that we hope will last for a long time. So I think I'm done. Thank you.
And now we're going to hear just a little bit from Dr. Glenn about how to approach a potential host for a letter of invitation. And then at the end, I'll be taking any questions you have about eligibility, about deadlines, application process at the end of this presentation. So Dr. Glenn, feel free to take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, actually, for me, and I'd like to say hello from the other Athens, Athens, Georgia, in the United States. This was one of the other interesting things about this particular collaboration. It's the Athens to Athens interaction. Much of what I would touch on has already been mentioned, but just briefly a little bit more about the interaction with Dr. Bukovala. It was actually me that initially reached out to her, and our interaction goes back to 2008 with an email that I sent to her because I had this interest in a particular family of enzymes, and through looking around on the web, found her information and learned a lot more about her, and reached out to her for some basic information. That led to a long series of emails and interactions, and what's turned into now a 4-year collaboration. And I offer my sincere thanks to the Fulbright Schuman program for allowing Dr. Bukovala to come to my lab for 4 months. It's definitely assisted in our collaboration, and I think very much fulfills the objectives of the program in terms of U.S. and EU relations. That example or that history kind of does play into the basic advice that I would give, in that how to reach out to someone. It basically involves these days email, and if you have a particular person of interest that you would like to reach out to, obviously that would begin with a simple email, and I wouldn't necessarily sort of lay out the request for a visit in the very first email. You want to develop a relationship. You want to develop a professional relationship with your potential host, and that involves a little bit of time. So the initial contact would be a basic question or two on a particular topic of interest, and if the potential host is interested, and they will respond, and then you can begin to foster that relationship in that way. And in that process, you will learn a lot more about the individual and vice versa, and you will get a sense of whether the potential collaboration and interaction will be a mutually beneficial one. That would be pretty much my number one and recommendation, is just to start early in contacting individuals and begin early with that professional interaction to foster that exchange. And if there is anyone within the participation list here today that's within the science or particularly the agriculture-related area, you can find out more information about the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Agricultural Research Service through the link that's been provided there on the left. That'll give you a lot of generic information, and you can sort of dig down deeper from there.
Thank you for sharing, Drs. Glenn and Bukovala. That was really helpful. Now, if any of you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. I see a few of you are typing. We'll hold on just 1 second. Could you repeat what the host letter should include? Host letters look different from every person that submits them. Usually, a host letter should be on professional letterhead, whether it be university letterhead or the letterhead of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It usually includes the contact information for the person that's inviting you to come perform research with them. It includes the resources that you'll be provided at the university or the institution, such as a desk or a mailbox, access to different research databases, things like this. It should also say what time period they're inviting you for. Is it required that the U.S. university inviting me has a research project in order to justify the invitation? It's up to you whether you're joining on to an existing research project that already exists or whether you have your own project that the university is willing to support. That part really is determined by you. We love to see original research projects that you come up with and the university is able to outline their support for that project. And I'm happy to take questions about studies as well, because not everyone will submit a letter of invitation. People who are studying within EU affairs will provide a letter of admission to universities that they're applying to. I am a lecturer in Dublin University and have consultancy experience in England. Does this qualify as two different EU countries' significant experience? Yes, it does. And that's why we have the preliminary application online, so that you can go to www.fulbrightschuman.eu, the link on the left-hand side of this webinar room, and fill out the 1 to 2 page application form along with your CV and a 1-page proposal about the project, and then we'll write back to you within 1 week, usually within 1 or 2 days, and tell you whether or not you are eligible for this award. Is it required to list 3 different potential hosts in the preliminary application? What if you already have a provisional agreement with one specific institution? That's great. You are by no means required to list 3 different potential hosts in the preliminary application. If you already know who will support you and invite you to the United States, feel free to also upload that letter of invitation into the preliminary application or mention it in the 1-page plan that you submit to us. Would a comparative research between U.S. law and Scandinavian law be eligible for the award if, example, EU law plays a crucial role for the Scandinavian member states' law on jurisdiction and conflict law? Well, you have to be careful here because you are looking at U.S. law and Scandinavian law, which sounds like a bilateral topic. You can't just focus on Scandinavian law as a representation for EU law. It really needs to be a little bit more broad than that. If U.S. law versus Scandinavian law is your topic, then maybe you should consider applying to the Fulbright program there. Is the selection process also taking into account the prestige of the U.S. university? No. As long as the institution that you're applying to is accredited or recognized by the U.S. government as a valid institution, then we do not take into account the prestige. The Fulbright program is really meant to increase mutual understanding, and that can happen at any institution within the United States, not just the big name ones. I was thinking of doing research in port environmental management. That is not part of an already operating research project. Is this a problem? No. If you can justify, once again, your project's relationship to U.S.-EU affairs or policy, then it is not a problem whether or not the research project already exists or whether it is an original creation of your own. Is it possible to have 2 U.S. hosts? Thank you, Tatiana. This is a wonderful question. It is possible to have 2 different host institutions within the U.S. You will need to submit letters of invitation from both of the U.S. hosts outlining the time that they're inviting you to stay at their facilities. Is there a Fulbright program in Scandinavia? If you send me an email, I will be happy to send you contact information. My email is on the screen here. It's advisor@fulbright.be. I see a few of you are typing. And remember, if you have specific questions about your eligibility or your project proposal, I'm happy to answer those via email. Right now, we'd love to really hammer out the details of eligibility in the application process. Do I need 2 hosts for a Fulbright grant? No, you do not need 2 different hosts. 1 host institution is adequate. If you prefer to have 2, then that is up to you and something that you should certainly include in your project proposal that you submit. Does minimum funding requirements from a U.S. host apply, and who pays them if they exist? I'm not sure that I understand that question, Tatiana. Maybe you can turn on your microphone and provide some clarification for what you're asking. The program does award 3,000 euros minimum per month, and then 2,000 euros for a travel and relocation grant. If there are extra costs that are required by the grantee, they will need to cover those costs for themselves, whether it be through outside funding, other fellowships, or personal funds. Are there more available grants for postdoc candidates or for PhD students? That really depends on the applicant pool that we have each year. We choose the best candidates that we can afford to send. Can you clarify the two different EU countries' significant experience? As academics, we cooperate with different countries. Is this enough to satisfy that? Unfortunately, just collaborating with someone else in a different country is not enough. You need to have spent time in the countries that you were collaborating with. So you need to have gone there to perform research, and it can't have just been a 2-week stint to visit the professors that you are working with. It has to have been at least 4 to 6 months of professional or academic experience. I have 2 more people typing. The reason for this 2 different EU countries experience requirement is really because we want you to be a representative of the entire EU to the United States. And so if you're looking to really study how U.S. Topic compares with the topic in your home country, then it's always best to consider the Fulbright program in your country of residence or nationality. Let's see here. The fact that I did my PhD in the UK and have been in a Greek university ever since is okay. Yes, that is certainly fine. That qualifies as significant experience. Do you need specific documentation if my home institution arranges an exchange program with a U.S. university for me, non-funded? No, you will still need to provide some sort of proof of admission or invitation to the university in the U.S., even if there is an established exchange program between your university and the program in the United States. Okay, I see 2 more people typing, and after these last 2 questions, I think we'll wrap it up, and then you have my email address and my phone number to contact me. But let me see if I can answer this last question. I see that there is more interest from young researchers. Does this mean that us olders have less chance? No. There is no age requirement for the Fulbright Schuman grant, and we happily support any strong applications that we receive. I have a question that says the more experiences in different EU countries, the better the chances. No, not necessarily. Our 2-country requirement is a standard requirement. However, of course, if you've had more experience in more countries, that will certainly not hurt you by any means. It will only enhance your chance to hopefully be a representative of the European Union to the United States. Is the program only open to EU citizens or to EU residents too? You must be an EU citizen to apply for this award. All right. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today for this webinar. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact me at the email address listed on this presentation.